So the final demo on this particular circuit is going to mimic the sleep LED on a laptop. We're essentially going to be making the LED brighter, and then having it fade, then making it brighter, having it fade. We're going to start with a couple variables here, brightness and change. Brightness will be what the current value of the brightness is for the LED, and change will be the increment or decrement amount, depending on which way we're going. We're going to put all this in an every function, which we saw earlier. So for every 1 second, we're going to set the brightness to the current brightness value in that variable. And then below that, let me reposition everything here to make sure it lines up. There we go. Now below that, we're going to increment the brightness variable by the amount of change that we set up above. So brightness will be dynamic, but change will stay static at 5. We also need to check bounds on this to make sure we don't go below 0 on the brightness or above 255, since those are the limits of the brightness function. Now if you go outside these thresholds, nothing bad's going to happen like a exploding LED or anything crazy, but it just doesn't make sense to exceed the 255 since that's the max value it can receive, and it doesn't make sense to have a negative brightness either, because once it's off, it just can't be more off. And for the sake of this demo, we also need to know when the thresholds are hit so that we can flop the change variable to the negative of what it was. And by that, I mean if it's a positive change, we're going to now have a negative change, and if it's a negative change, we're now going to have positive change. And what this does is allow us to increment and decrement the brightness variable appropriately. Now that'll finish the code for the final demo on this circuit, so let's switch back on over to PowerShell here and see what this code does. Now if you look on over at the camera view there, you'll see the LED get a little bit brighter every second. Slowly but surely, it's getting brighter and brighter. Kinda painfully slow there. And you might see little red boxes pop up, but that's just my webcam thinking there are faces in the shot. So let's go ahead and kill this and see if we can make that a little bit smoother. Now we could increment the change variable there to say 10, but what we're actually going to do is change the time interval and knock that down to 1/10 of a second. If we left it at a second and incremented the change variable, then it would still be pretty choppy, even though it would get brighter and fade a lot quicker. Now let's go and execute these changes to see how much better our demo is. There we go, that's the stuff. Now you do see a little bit of a flicker, though I think you see it more through the camera than you would by looking at it. Now I'm certainly not advocating looking at the LED, though a quick glance here and there may not be too bad, but they do get really bright and will leave you seeing spots afterward. Now that's all I have for the second set of demos here on this particular circuit, so let's get back to the presentation and see what our next one is, so we can see what other fun we can have with LEDs.